In this episode, bioretention, trees, shade, and does that mean we need to change the plants that we plant in the understory? Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro, and welcome back to video 2 in this mini-series where we are looking at and exploring trees in bioretention systems in a fair bit of detail. Or it could be episode 3 if you consider the fact that in episode 93, we produced an initial video about this, didn't go into super amounts of detail, and that we are now back, sometime later, kind of filling in the gaps around that. So it's episode 2 in this series, episode 3 overall for trees in bioretention. But one of the reasons that we're back and filling in these gaps is that we had quite a few YouTube comments on episode 93, and there were some questions. They were good questions. And so we're back to answer those. So today we're going to answer one of them. And this question comes from Peter. And Peter's question goes, oops, I clicked on the wrong thing. Here we go. I like your approach to trees in bioretention systems. Is their purpose really to shade out weeds though? Wouldn't we need to change the understory planting once the trees are established and the light regime changes for the smaller plants? Very good question, Peter. The short answer is, yeah, I agree that we need understory plants. When we have trees in bioretention, we need understory plants that are tolerant of the shade. What I don't 100% agree with here is the fact that we need to change them. Because here's the funny thing. When we pick plants off the standard bioretention list, so these are things like Lomandra, Carex, Dianella, although some reasons why I'm not a massive fan of Dianella, but Dianella, Imperator cylindrica. There's 4 examples that are used pretty commonly. When we pick plants off the standard list, these are often riparian species that would naturally grow either, in the case of Carex, like right on the water's edge in a waterway, or Lomandras just slightly up the bank. But in all cases, these are actually species that aren't just shade tolerant, but actually want to grow under a canopy. It's actually weird a lot of the time that we plant these species in complete sunlight without a canopy at all. So I agree in the sense that, yeah, we need species that are shade tolerant, absolutely. But by chance, at least in Australia, a lot of the plants that we're planting anyway will be much, much happier if we can give them a canopy. So in that sense, no, we don't need to change the understory planting. They are just adaptable enough that if we plant them up front with the young trees, they will in many cases hang on while there's lots of sunlight coming in and then get heaps happier when the canopy gets up and gets established. So long story short. Now that doesn't mean though that if you were planting a system like this, that you couldn't, which is what I think you're alluding to, Peter, is over time try and plan for a bit of succession and try and get in some species that really do like the shade and only the shade and get them into a niche that suits them. You could, if you took a really strategic approach to this, go, okay, up front we're going to plant this with Melaleucas and Lomandras, let's say, because they're both tough as nails. They can both help us through the establishment phase. And then maybe at some point down the track, once we've got the canopy, got a more set ecosystem, then start to try and bring in select plants from other species to see what takes, select plants from other species that are shade tolerant, to see what takes and to try and fill this out as a really complete and diverse ecosystem. That I definitely think there's potential for. Whether you do that within the constraints of a practical maintenance budget is another question, but it's worth exploring. Anyway, I hope that answers your question. Thank you very much for asking the questions. We love responding to viewer questions. It's really, really fun. It makes for good discussion because it makes us think about things from different angles. So anyone who's out there is watching, who's got a question or got a comment, definitely hit us up. Leave the comments on Facebook, on YouTube. We'll do our best to respond to them. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video in this mini-series.